The Beirut Barracks bombings occurred during the Lebanese Civil War when two truck bombs struck separate buildings housing United States and French military forces, members of the Multinational Force in Lebanon, killing 299 American and French servicemen. An obscure group calling itself Islamic Jihad claimed responsibility for the bombings. The chain of command likely ran from Tehran to Iran's ambassador to Syria, Ali Akbar Mohtashemi-Pour in Damascus, to IRGC commander Hossein Dahiyan in Beirut, as the Iranians drew on assets in Lebanon. Hezbollah, Iran and Syria have continued to deny any involvement in any of the bombings even though, in 2004, the Iranian government erected a monument in Tehran to commemorate the 1983 bombings and its martyrs. Suicide bombers detonated each of the truck bombs in the attack on the building serving as a barracks for the 1st Battalion 8th Marines. The death toll was 241 American servicemen, 220 Marines, 18 sailors, and 3 soldiers, making this incident the deadliest single-day death toll for the United States Marine Corps since World War II's Battle of Iwo Jima, the deadliest single-day death toll for the United States military since the first day of the Vietnam War's Tet Offensive, and the deadliest single attack on Americans overseas since World War II. Another 128 Americans were wounded in the blast. 13 later died of their injuries, and they are numbered among the total number who died. An elderly Lebanese man, a custodian vendor who was known to work and sleep in his concession stand next to the building, was also killed in the first blast. The explosives used were later estimated to be equivalent to as much as 9,525 kilograms of TNT. In the attack on the French barracks, the 9-story Draca building, 55 paratroopers from the 1st Parachute Chasseur Regiment and 3 paratroopers of the 9th Parachute Chasseur Regiment were killed and 15 injured by a second truck bomb. This attack occurred just minutes after the attack on the American Marines. It was France's single worst military loss since the end of the Algerian War. These attacks eventually led to the withdrawal of the International Peacekeeping Force from Lebanon, where they had been stationed since the withdrawal of the Palestine Liberation Organization following the Israeli invasion of Lebanon in 1982. The bombings, Sunday, October 23, 1983, at around 6:22, a 19-ton yellow Mercedes-Benz stake-bed truck drove to the Beirut International Airport, where the U.S. 24th Marine Amphibious Unit was deployed. The 1st Battalion 8th Marines, commanded by Lieutenant Colonel Larry Gerlach, was a subordinate element of the 24th MAU. The truck was not the water truck they had been expecting. Instead, it was a hijacked truck carrying explosives. The driver turned his truck onto an access road leading to the compound. He drove into and circled the parking lot, and then he accelerated to crash through a 5-foot-high barrier of concertina wire separating the parking lot from the building. The wire popped, like somebody walking on twigs. The truck then passed between 2 sentry posts and through an open vehicle gate in the perimeter chain-link fence, crashed through a guard shack in front of the building and smashed into the lobby of the building serving as the barracks for the 1st Battalion 8th Marines. The sentries at the gate were operating under rules of engagement which made it very difficult to respond quickly to the truck. Sentries were ordered to keep their weapons at condition for. Only one sentry, LCP Eddie DeFranco, was able to load and chamber a round. However, by that time the truck was already crashing into the building's entryway. The suicide bomber, an Iranian national named Ismail Askari, detonated his explosives, which were later estimated to be equivalent to approximately 9,525 kilograms of TNT. The force of the explosion collapsed the four-story building into rubble, crushing many inside. According to Eric Hummel in his History of the U.S. Marine Landing Force, the force of the explosion initially lifted the entire four-story structure, shearing the bases of the concrete support columns, each measuring 15 feet in circumference and reinforced by numerous 1 3/4-inch steel rods. The airborne building then fell in upon itself. A massive shock wave and ball of flaming gas was hurled in all directions. The explosive mechanism was a gas-enhanced device consisting of compressed butane in canisters employed with pentaerythritol tetranitrate to create a fuel-air explosive. The bomb was carried on a layer of concrete covered with a slab of marble to direct the blast upward. Despite the lack of sophistication and wide availability of its component parts, a gas-enhanced device can be a lethal weapon. These devices were similar to fuel or thermobaric weapons, explaining the large blast and damage. An after-action forensic investigation by the Federal Bureau of Investigation determined that the bomb was so powerful that it probably would have brought down the building even if the sentries had managed to stop the truck between the gate and the building. Less than 10 minutes later, a similar attack occurred against the barracks of the French 3rd Company of the 1st Parachute Chasseur Regiment, 6 kilometers away in the Ramlet al-Bader area of West Beirut. As the suicide bomber drove his pickup truck toward the Draka building, French paratroopers began shooting at the truck and its driver. It is believed that the driver was killed and the truck was immobilized and rolled to stop about 15 yards from the building. A few moments passed before the truck exploded, bringing down the 9-story building and killing 58 French paratroopers. It is believed that this bomb was detonated by remote control and that, though similarly constructed, it was smaller than and slightly less than half as powerful as the one used against the Marines at the Beirut International Airport. Many of the paratroopers had gathered on their balconies moments earlier to see what was happening at the airport. It was France's worst military loss since the end of the Algerian War in 1962. Beirut, June 1982 to October 1983. Timeline: 6 June 1982, Israel invaded Lebanon. Operation Peace for Galilee. 23 August 1982, Bachir Gemayel was elected to be Lebanon's president. 25 August 1982, a MNF of approximately 400 French, 800 Italian soldiers and 800 Marines of the 32d Marine Amphibious Unit were deployed in Beirut as part of a peacekeeping force to oversee the evacuation of Palestine Liberation Organization guerrillas. 10 September 1982, the PLO retreats from Beirut under MNF protection. Subsequently, the 32d Mao was ordered out of Beirut by the President of the United States. 14 September 1982, Lebanon's President, Bachir Gemayel, was assassinated. 16 September to 18 September 1982, the Sabra and Shatila massacres. 21 September 1982, Bachir Gemayel's brother, Amin Gemayel, was elected to be Lebanon's president. 29 September 1982, the 32d Mao was redeployed to Beirut, rejoining 2,200 French and Italian MNF troops already in place. 30 October 1982, the 32d Mao was relieved by the 24th Mao. 15 February 1983, the 32d Mao, redesignated as the 22d Mao, returned to Lebanon to relieve the 24th Mao. 18 April 1983, the U.S. Embassy bombing in Beirut killed 63, of whom 17 were Americans. 17 May 1983, May 17 Agreement of 1983, 30 May 1983, the 24th Mao relieved the 22d Mao. Mission on June 6, 1982. Israel initiated Operation Peace for Galilee, and invaded Lebanon ostensibly to create a 40 km buffer zone between the PLO and Syrian forces in Lebanon and Israel. The Israeli invasion was tacitly approved by the U.S., and the U.S. provided overt military support to Israel in the form of arms and material. However, what the U.S. agreed to support and what Israel did were altogether two separate matters. Nevertheless, the U.S. apparent support for Israel's invasion of Lebanon, taken in conjunction with U.S. support for Lebanese President Bashir Gemayel and the Lebanese armed forces, alienated many. Bashir Gemayel was the legally elected president, but he was a partisan Maronite Christian and covert associate of Israel. These factors served to disaffect the Lebanese Muslim and Druze communities. This animosity was made worse by the Phalangist, a right-wing, largely Maronite Lebanese militia force closely associated with U.S.-backed President Gemayel. The Phalangist militia was responsible for multiple, bloody attacks against the Muslim and Druze communities in Lebanon and for the 1982 atrocities committed in the PLO refugee camps, Sabra and Shatila, while the Israeli Defense Force provided security and looked on. The Phalangist militia's attacks on Sabra and Shatila were purportedly a response to the September 14, 1982, assassination of President-elect Bashir Gemayel. Amin Gemayel, Bashir's brother, succeeded Bashir as the elected president of Lebanon, and Amin continued to represent and advance Maronite interests. All of this, according to British foreign correspondent Robert Fisk, served to generate ill will against the MNF among Lebanese Muslims and especially among the Shiites living in the slums of West Beirut and around the Beirut International Airport where the U.S. Marines were located. Lebanese Muslims were manipulated into believing the MNF, and the Americans in particular, were unfairly siding with the Maronite Christians in their attempt to dominate Lebanon. Muslim feelings against the American presence were exacerbated when counter-battery missiles lobbed by the U.S. Sixth Fleet hit innocent bystanders in the Druze-dominated Shuf Mountains. Colonel Timothy J. Garrity, the commander of the U.S. 24th Marine Amphibious Unit deployed as peacekeepers in Beirut during the incident, has said that the American and the French headquarters were targeted primarily because of who we were and what we represented, and that it is noteworthy that the United States provided direct naval gunfire support, which I strongly opposed for a week, to the Lebanese army at a mountain village called Suq al-Ghab on the 19th of September, and that the French conducted an airstrike on the 23rd of September in the Bekaa Valley. American support removed any lingering doubts of our neutrality, and I stated to my staff at the time that we were going to pay in blood for this decision. The naval gunfire support Colonel Garrity referenced was from 4 U.S. warships: the US Virginia, US Arthur W. Radford, US Bowen, and US John Rogers. Prior to September 19, the US Bowen had fired an interdiction mission on September 7. And the US Bowen and US John Rogers had together fired another interdiction mission on September 16 to intimidate Syrian and Druze militia firing on the Marines. Some authors, including Thomas Friedman, point to the use of this naval gunfire on September 19 as the beginning point of the U.S. forces being seen as participants in the Civil War rather than peacekeepers, and opening them up to retaliation. In his memoir, General Colin Powell noted, as Colonel Garrity had already projected, that when the shells started falling on the Shiites, they assumed the American referee had taken sides. Some analysts subsequently criticized the decision to have U.S. warships shell Druze and Syrian forces. They claim that this action forced a shift in the previously neutral U.S. forces by convincing local Lebanese Muslims that the U.S. had sided with the Lebanese Christians. In 1982, the Islamic Republic of Iran established a base in the Syrian-controlled Bekaa Valley in Lebanon. That base is still operational today. From that base, Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps founded, financed, trained and equipped Hezbollah to operate as a proxy army for Iran. Some analysts believe the newly formed Islamic Republic of Iran was heavily involved in the bomb attacks and that a major factor leading it to orchestrate the attacks on the barracks was America's support for Iraq in the Iran-Iraq War and its extending of $2.5 billion in trade credit to Iraq, while halting the shipments of arms to Iran. A few weeks before the bombing, Iran warned that providing armaments to Iran's enemies would provoke retaliatory punishment. On September 26, 1983, the National Security Agency intercepted an Iranian diplomatic communications message from the Iranian intelligence agency, the Ministry of Information and Security, to its ambassador, Ali Akbar Motashemi, in Damascus. The message directed the ambassador to take spectacular action against the American Marines. The intercepted message, dated September 26, would not be passed to the Marines until October 26, 3 days after the bombing. Much of what is now public knowledge of Iranian involvement, e.g., PETN purportedly supplied by Iran, the suicide bomber's name and nationality, etc., in the bombings was not revealed to the public until the 2003 trial. Peterson, al. v. Islamic Republic, al. Testimony by Admiral James Ace Lyons, U.S.N., and FBI forensic explosive investigator Danny A. Defenbaugh, plus a deposition by a Hezbollah operative named Mahmoud were particularly revealing. Rescue and recovery operations. October 23 to 28, 1983. American organized rescue efforts began immediately within 3 minutes of the bombing, and continued for days. Unit maintenance personnel were not billeted in the BLT building, and they rounded up pry bars, torches, jacks and other equipment from unit vehicles and maintenance shops and began rescue operations. Meanwhile, combat engineers and truck drivers began using their organic assets, i.e., trucks and engineering equipment, to help with the rescue operations. 24th MAU medical personnel, Navy dentists LT Gil Bigelow and LT Jim Ware, established 2 aid stations to triage and treat casualties. Medivac helicopters, CH-46s from Marine Medium Helicopter Squadron, were airborne by 6:45 a.m. U.S. Navy medical personnel from nearby vessels of the U.S. 6th Fleet went ashore to assist with treatment and medical evacuation of the injured, as did sailors and shipboard Marines who volunteered to assist with the rescue effort. Lebanese, Italian, British, and even French troops, who had suffered their own loss, provided assistance. Many Lebanese civilians voluntarily joined the rescue effort. Especially important was a Lebanese construction contractor, Rafik Hariri of the firm Oger Liban, who provided heavy construction equipment, e.g., a 40-ton P&H crane, etc., from nearby beer work sites. Hariri's construction equipment proved vitally necessary in lifting and removing heavy slabs of concrete debris at the barracks site, just as it had been necessary in assisting with clearing debris after the April U.S. Embassy attack. While the rescuers were at times hindered by hostile sniper and artillery fire, several Marine survivors were pulled from the rubble at the BLT 1/8 bomb site and airlifted by helicopter to the Iwo Jima, located offshore. U.S. Navy, U.S. Air Force and Royal Air Force Medivac planes transported the seriously wounded to the hospital at Rafah Krateri in Cyprus and to U.S. and German hospitals in West Germany. A few survivors, including LTC Gerlach, were sent to the Italian MNF dispensary and to Lebanese hospitals in Beirut. Israel's offers to medevac the wounded to hospitals in Israel were rejected as politically unacceptable, even though Israeli hospitals were known to provide excellent care and were considerably closer than hospitals in Germany. At about noon Sunday, October 23, the last survivor was pulled from the rubble. He was LTJG Danny G. Wheeler, Lutheran chaplain for BLT 1/8. Other men survived beyond Sunday, but they succumbed to their injuries before they could be extracted from the rubble. By Wednesday, the majority of the bodies and body parts had been recovered from the stricken barracks, and the recovery effort ended on Friday. After 5 days, the FBI came in to investigate, and the Marines returned to normal duties. The explosion at the French barracks blew the whole building off its foundations and threw it about 6 meters westward, while breaking the windows of almost every apartment house in the neighborhood. Grim-faced French paratroopers and Lebanese civil defense workers, aided by bulldozers, also worked under spotlights through the night at the French barracks, trying to pull apart the 8 stories of 90-centimeter thick cement that had fallen on top of one another, and to reach the men they could still hear screaming for help.